So Apple today introduced a whole bunch of new products and, their yearly introduction of cool Apple things. And we finally learned a little bit about the Apple TV and how that's going to be integrated into gaming. What did you guys think about what Apple had to show?
Well, it was a very Apple move to announce the sort of things they did, and that is sort of these incremental tech updates that stoke the interests of fans who are already sort of bought into the Apple ecosystem and want to get something new. But I'm not terribly impressed in terms of, I think, the growth of that audience. I don't know if Apple is really going to capture anyone brand new with their updates, even with the gaming stuff on Apple TV, which to me is a little bit late and a little bit middling.
Well, all of the hype around this event leading into it was they were going to do something huge in gaming, and what it ended up being was just basically some gaming functionality on the new Apple TV, right? Which is kind of light. So the games they talked about was Crossy Road and
Don't talk down about Crossy Road.
No, I'm not saying it's a bad game. I mean, great is getting multiplayer, but it's not exactly a console killer, and that's what some tech blogs were going out there saying. Wow, they've really made these huge strides into this market, and it's going to like really impact the current console manufacturers. But their target market for this is very clearly families. They also had that Harmonix game, which I can't recall what the name of it was.
Sports Beat or something like that?
Sports Beat or something like that. And once again, that looked like, Elite Beat agents with, some Wii functionality, put into it, right?
It looked very kind of like maybe Wii Sports with a rhythm element.
Yeah.
But I mean, were you actually expecting Apple to try out a competitor to the Xbox or the PS4? Like we've known all along, that this is something that's more going against Amazon and the Fire TV and that kind of gaming functionality. Like, to think that they are going to try to replace PlayStation or Xbox or even Nintendo is I think, really silly.
Yeah, I don't think they were ever going to, come out and say, here is our Apple gaming device that is just dedicated to gaming. I don't think Apple has an interest in that space at all. I think that, they probably see, other things that they could, possibly spend their billions and billions of unspent money on. And, gaming is something that they're not really into. What they're really strong right now in the gaming side of things, though, is that ecosystem, right? So they have the whole iTunes infrastructure that supports everything that's already on iOS. So, yes, it's not going to kill the likes of an Xbox One or a PlayStation 4, but, it will sort of extend their reach in sort of mobile gaming.
Apple is making a move into gaming, but I think in our world we get so caught up in the consoles and the PC that we forget that mobile gaming is still gaming for a lot of people. Like when they hear the word games, I play games, I play Angry Birds. So I think Apple is making an appreciable difference in that market at large. Yes, because of the App Store, but the problem with the App Store is that it does not have very good curation. Apple sort of surfaces some games that are interesting, but there's also a lot of stuff that appears that are clones, they're low quality games, there's a lot of hidden microtransactions, and I think that's going to be their biggest problem, tapping into the rest of gaming beyond what they've already captured with the iPhone. I think this is a good way for them to expand that base, but they're not going to be breaking any new ground elsewhere.
Yeah, but to be fair though, the apples to apples comparison in mobile is the Android store versus the iTunes store, and the iTunes store is far leaps and bounds ahead of functionality and having that sort of quality level. Yes, there is a lot of sort of crap on the iTunes store, but I tend to find it a much better sort of browsing experience. And the curation stuff is all Apple on that thing. So it's all internal, sort of mysterious editors that work at Apple, basically choosing those games. And then that's how you find success on that App Store.
And when I'm looking through the App Store, I'm never looking to try to find games myself. I'm not just going through what are the top Flappy Bird type games. No, I just look at the top 100 games, top 100 free, top 100 paid. Which one of these have I heard of from my friends, and that's the one I'm going to try out. Or I just hear about a game from my friend, and that's the one that I download. But from the curation aspect, I think it's interesting that they're also making a big push for multimedia, which we saw is kind of something that didn't work for Microsoft and PlayStation, and which could probably work a lot better for Apple. That they're going to be bringing together stuff that we see across Netflix and Hulu and all those different devices as a way to get not just gaming, but all of your multimedia.
Yeah, I mean, Apple is actually not doing anything new. NVIDIA and even Amazon have done a really good job of offering very similar services. If you look at Android TV, actually, which NVIDIA is leveraging with its Shield tablet and its other Shield devices, it uses great voice recognition, which is something that Amazon tried to do, but Google's algorithm is so much better. Apple just has the market share to kind of get those people who are already into that Apple world to latch onto this stuff. So it's not really, for me, very exciting to see this stuff because those options exist. It's only now just kind of sort of coming to light because of who Apple is.
It's a completely Apple move, though, because they're never first movers in anything in tech. What they do is they come in later with a shinier UI and, basically market it so much better than anyone else can. So, yeah, I mean, there are sort of like other products out there that are doing the exact same thing that Apple TV is trying to do and bringing all these, disparate media services together. But, they could have an edge, depending on how cool that UI is actually to use. They could actually, leap far ahead of some of the other competitors right now.
And one of the interesting things they're doing is also with the controller that it's not, I think, what some people might have been expecting, that this is something more like the Amazon Fire TV, which was like had a separate game controller.
Yeah.
This is more like a touch-enabled device. It's more like just a traditional controller.
It's a very simplistic thing. So like the top sort of third of it basically is the touch sensor. And from what we saw, that's how you basically you controlled most games. So I think for like Crossy Road, it was tapping to jump and swiping left and right to move. So yeah, obviously that in itself is going to be a barrier towards the types of games that they can actually play on Apple TV. I think the most interesting one was that Warhammer game that they actually showed off. But even that seemed to be pretty much on rails. And
graphically, it's really pretty. It's like Infinity Blade. Looks amazing, but is not the kind of gameplay that we think of as this is a game that I'm going to play. This is not going to compete against Metal Gear Solid or Grand Theft Auto or anything like that.
And this is just to be clear, that Warhammer game was for the iPhone and the iPad. So yeah, I mean, in terms of sort of like visual fidelity, Apple's been doing this for years, right? Coming up with this big Infinity Blade looking thing that they say, is console quality graphics, but, don't really have much of an impact, further out than, the sort of like Apple fans that are already out there.
And I think one of the interesting things we'll see is how Amazon is going to respond to this. We haven't seen a lot from Amazon Gaming, and we're still waiting to see what's going to happen with like Kim Swift and all these big developers that they've had. We haven't really seen where that's going in the gaming space, and this is Apple basically getting a jump on that from kind of out of nowhere. And that's probably one of the things that's going to be more interesting as we finish up this year and go into next year.
Yeah, if the Fire Phone is anything to learn from, Amazon may have too much hubris when it comes to their promises, but we'll see.
All right, so that's Apple in a nutshell. I guess we'll see what's going to happen.